Uncle Bob here in Williamsburg, Virginia, and I'm just getting ready for the preparing for the summits coming up in a couple of weeks, and it takes me back to 2023. I'm here with my good friend Pete Spadero, and I felt that we needed to, I think we need to remember our good friend Steve Harney at this time, because in 2023 Steve came back out of retirement and was at last year's summit. And when I heard Steve was going to be at the summit, I just got so excited, because I started out my friendship with Steve back in 2016. We were at an event in California, and I had this mailer out there that's saying if you're moving to Canada, we could sell you a home. It was a takeoff, and if you didn't like either of the candidates, we can move you to Canada. So Steve got a kick out of that, and we were talking about it. And so I said, "Hey, Steve, I think that you should run for president." I said, "You're a better candidate than those guys." So anyway, I sneaked up on stage and I put up a sign. Tom has those flip charts, and I wrote up on there, "Steve Harney for president." So from that moment on, we were kind of friends, and we unfortunately, right after that, in 2016, Steve retired. So what happened is that I was in a position that I said, although we were communicating via text and email and Facebook, I didn't think I'd ever see Steve again, because Steve retired because he couldn't travel anymore, and that was the situation. So when it came up on the agenda for the 2023 summit, I was like really stoked. Anyway, Steve got up there, and prior to his presentation, I was out talking to Dave Childers, and he told me, he said, "Hey Bob," he says, "after Steve presents, he's coming back to the booth." So he gave me that hot tip. So I was sitting there, and as soon as Steve was up on stage at the summit. If you weren't there, or you wanted to remember, this is Steve up on stage at the summit. And so anyway, I was with my friend Maury Sennett, and I said, "Maury, come on, let's go. He just finished. We got to get to the booth." So we got to the booth, so we were right there, and Steve comes up, and he's fighting through the crowd. There was quite a crowd there. At the booth, and he's maneuvering. He had a walker, so he gets the walker, and he finally kind of pushes people this way, that way, so he could put the thing in. It's one of those walkers you can use as a chair. So he sits down in the thing. He looks up at me, sees me, and he just goes, "Oh my God!" And he flies up out of that chair, and he gives me the biggest bear hug that I've had in a long time. So anyway, tears are coming down the side of my face, and I just have to thank him for that friendship, and I have to and I've already thanked Tom 100 times for this opportunity. So so we did get this little photo shoot here of him with us at that's myself, Maury, and Steve. And so, but we really need to do I was thinking of what's a tribute to Steve. So anyway, just to take history a little further, in October, I went up to, I grabbed two of the roadmap tours, the one in Annapolis and the one in Boston, and I actually went with my son to the one in Annapolis, and I was talking with Tom, and Tom goes, "Bob, do I have a surprise for you?" And I said, "What is it?" He goes, "Steve's here." I said, "Oh my God," I was so excited. Because, I never thought I was going to see the guy again, and I was just like goosebumps running down my body, and like almost tearing up again. So anyhow, Steve I think we got him on here, giving his presentation up on stage, and then so he and I got together, and I got the opportunity, because these weren't in circulation yet, I got an opportunity to give Steve his TF1 hat. Because I didn't have that opportunity, because I didn't ever think we'd get face to face again. So in remembering Steve, I was looking at the Keeping Current Matters had their celebrating the impact of Steve Harney article out, and he was a visionary and a leader, and nothing says that more than how he was, his character and so forth, out in the real estate community. But one of the things that it says in here, and I'll just read it, it says, he left an indelible mark on those who had the privilege of knowing him. And nothing can say it better than that. And then it was his character, his family values, and his commitment to helping others. Now, just to highlight how he would help others, I'm here with Pete Spadero. Pete goes way back with Steve, back in his Prudential days up in New York. So, Pete, whenever I'd say I talk to, because whenever I would communicate with Steve about Pete, he'd say, it's not Pete, it's Peter. And he'd always correct me, but to me he's Pete, but to Steve he was Peter. So Pete, tell everyone about your experience with Steve as a leader and a trainer.
So it was the early 90s at Prudential Long Island Realty. I was 20 years old, brand new real estate agent. Obviously being young, I didn't have a whole lot of experience. I went through some of the training that they had in the beginning and just, here's your desk, here's your phone, start making some calls and go outdoor knocking. So as a young person, not knowing the industry so well, Steve saw that, I needed some help just getting me started, just start, getting my wheels going. So Steve, I got to know Steve. He worked in the Ronkonkoma office and I was in the Selden office, but we got to know each other and he offered his time and we went out one-on-one, and with Steve, he took me door knocking and just helped me out, gave me some advice, a lot of great advice as we were driving. And I remember I was driving at the time, 20 years old. I had a 1986 Jeep CJ7. It was great, not the best real estate car, but one of the things that Steve said to me, and I won't forget, was, if any clients ever say anything about it, you just tell them that, your Benz is in the shop, that kind of thing. So just kind of play off the whole Jeep thing. Well, I wound up getting a more reasonable real estate car eventually, but I'll never forget that Steve, I think we had thousands of agents. I don't remember the size of it. Again, it was 30 plus years ago, but it was a huge organization, and Steve took the time to take me out one-on-one, show me how he does things, and just give me some great advice. So I always remember that 30 plus years later, and I've moved out of state. I'm in Virginia now, and that always stuck with me for a long, long time. It still does. So thank you, Steve.
Well, Pete, you also had another story about the real fun side of Steve. I mean, Peter, did I say Peter? Peter. But the real fun side of Steve, and matter of fact, Steve and I, we would laugh about this every time I talk to him, because I won't blow the story. I'll tell you at the end what I always say to him.
Yeah, so this was, again, early 90s when the Seinfeld show was on and really hot. Everybody was watching Seinfeld, so that was when it was airing once a week and no reruns yet. So we were watching it kind of, not live, but the first airing. So it was the next day after the Seinfeld airing. Steve was doing the training, corporate training at Prudential, and we were there, hundreds of agents in the room, and don't remember what it was, but it was one of his training, presenting. And during the breaks, he would come over, and me and a group of other agents, friends, we would just kind of chat. So during one of the breaks, we were talking about Seinfeld and the Seinfeld episode that was just on. And if you remember Seinfeld, it was the one where Jerry was dating a girl and he forgot her name. He didn't really catch her name. And the only clue that she gave him was that her name rhymed with a female body part. So Jerry, throughout the episode, was trying to figure out what is this woman's name. So we were talking about that, and so I'm laughing because it was so funny. So the break time was over, and Steve starts walking back up to go up present again. And again, hundreds of agents in the room. He must have taken at least a dozen steps or so, goes like this, turns back, comes back to us and says, "Dolores," and then walks right back on stage. So to me, it was just amazing that here's somebody who's probably trying to get his head together, his thoughts together to go back on stage and present. But all he's thinking about is the riddle of what is this woman's name. And that's another thing that just stuck with me for decades. So it was hilarious.
And Pete always told me that story, and I always had that conversation with Steve, and that's why I didn't want to say it to me, but I would say, "Hey, Dolores," you know, and so we just would laugh and laugh and laugh. And Steve was just such a fun guy, such a big-hearted guy, and he's going to be missed. But I'm going to tell you, and just to close this tribute out to him, number one is, you know, from the bottom of my heart, I say thank you, and also that, you know, he's not gone. He's just living in a quieter place, if that's possible for Steve. But if anybody doesn't believe that at the 2024 summit, Steve isn't there in spirit, all I can say is you're a moron.